This podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. So welcome back to another deep dive. And imagine for a second that you're channeling a multidimensional, all-knowing cosmic entity.
Right.
And the very first thing this infinite being wants to talk about is like your friend's $7.95 dinner tab at some tacky nautical restaurant.
Which is just so incredibly specific.
It really is. So for this deep dive, we're actually skipping the usual introductory stuff on channeled literature. We're jumping right into the glaring, kind of hilarious anomalies of session 333 of the Seth Material.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, it's specifically from book 7 of the early sessions, and the date of record is April 10th, 1967.
And right up front, we definitely need to formally credit the Seth Material and the publisher New Awareness Network for preserving this text. Because, what happens in this specific 1967 session, which was channeled through Jane Roberts, it completely shatters all those preconceived notions of what a so-called cosmic message is supposed to sound like.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we are exploring a text that blends what you might initially dismiss as spooky psychic parlor tricks with some of the most unvarnished, hilarious psychological tough love you will ever read.
It is such a phenomenal contrast. I mean, if you're listening to this, you've probably read your fair share of esoteric texts, right?
The usual stuff.
Exactly. You expect these booming voices from the mountaintop handing down the abstract secrets of the universe in, like, archaic riddles. But instead, Seth kicks off this session with a really cheeky, almost sarcastic greeting.
He really sets a tone.
He does. He literally says, quote, "I shall indeed act the host this evening."
Which immediately establishes this undeniable, highly specific personality. I mean, Seth isn't just an empty conduit for abstract philosophy.
Not at all.
He operates as a distinct character. He's witty, he's hyper-observant, and frankly, he just doesn't suffer fools gladly. He's essentially holding court in Jane Roberts' living room with two guests, Barbara Ingold and John Bradley.
Yeah, just hanging out in the living room.
Exactly. And the way he chooses to legitimize his presence is entirely counterintuitive. Like, he doesn't start with the cosmos. He starts with corporate gossip.
Oh, okay, yes. Let's unpack this because it is wild. It's like having a psychic ring camera or something.
It's a great way to put it.
Right, because he turns to John Bradley, who, by the way, Seth refers to by his inner entity name, Philip, and he casually brings up this thing he calls the meeting of the five.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. So John works for Cyril Drug, and he recently took a business trip to Chicago. And Seth just casually drops into the conversation that decisions are going to be made in a completely different city that will directly impact John's state.
And he's so playful about it, too.
Yeah, he even teases John about his godly company that he's taken a Pledge of Allegiance to.
What's fascinating here is the sheer granularity of the intelligence Seth provides. Like, he tells John, there seems to be an SG connected with the repercussions of the meeting of the five.
An SG.
Right. And then he says one is given to reading books, though he does not carry a portable bar in his car.
A portable bar in his car? I mean, who says that?
I know, it's so oddly specific.
Yeah.
And he even provides a strict timeline. He mentions May or June, the 4th or 5th, and this new undertaking connected with fabrics.
But wait, because a skeptic looking at this transcript, they would immediately argue that this is just a lucky guess, right? Or worse, just a parlor trick.
Oh, sure, of course they would.
Like, how do we know Jane Roberts didn't just overhear John talking about his Chicago trip before the session started? Why is an all-knowing entity focused on a portable bar in someone's car?
Well, that is the exact question we have to ask if we want to understand the mechanism of these sessions. The mundane focus isn't an accident at all. It's actually a deliberate technique.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about computing. In computing, there's something called a handshake protocol. Before two systems can transfer heavy, encrypted data, they have to send these small, easily verifiable packets of information back and forth.
Oh, to prove the connection is secure.
Exactly. To prove it's secure and authentic, Seth is essentially executing a psychological handshake protocol here. If he starts by saying, the universe is composed of expanding rings of conscious energy, well, you can't verify that.
Right, there's no way to fact-check the universe.
Exactly. But if he tells you about a specific coworker's portable bar or a corporate meeting on June 4th, you can literally go to the office on June 5th and verify it.
Ah, okay. So he is establishing a baseline of empirical validity. He proves the connection is clear on the micro level before he starts downloading all the heavier philosophical concepts.
Precisely.
That makes total sense. But I mean, he takes this handshake to an almost absurd level of surveillance when he shifts his focus to Jane and her husband's friends.
Oh, the New York trip.
Yes. Bill and Peggy Gallagher, they happen to be vacationing in New York City at that exact moment. And Seth essentially tunes into their vacation live.
Tunes in is really the perfect way to phrase it, because the imagery he provides is highly cinematic. It's like he's watching a movie of them. He refers to them as the Jesuit and the cat lover.
Which is just a hilarious nickname.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then he just lists the interior decor of their hotel room. He notes this dark green, modernistic plastic chair with wooden legs.
Wooden legs, yeah.
A bedspread with an upraised pattern in a hobnail fashion. He even mentions an appliance into which one places coins.
Probably a magic fingers bed or a radiator or something, right?
Most likely, yeah. And he mentions room number 202, 14 steps, and this large circular clock above a stairway that has gold spokes of a nautical design.
A nautical clock. And he even sees a South American combo playing music and gives the name Conchita.
Just incredibly detailed.
Yeah, he catches the minor dramas of their travel too, like he mentions a crashed glass or mirror and that someone cut their finger slightly. But then we get to my absolute favorite detail.
The restaurant.
Yes. He describes them eating at a place that sounds like Denai, where the dinner comes to exactly $7.95. And he says the menus have pictures of mermaids or Hawaiian dancers on them. Mermaids on the menu.
It's just brilliant, because it shatters the human ego's expectation of the divine.
How do you mean?
Well, we want the divine to be entirely divorced from the mundane, right? We think a multidimensional entity shouldn't care about a $7 dinner tab. But Seth uses the mundane to shatter human skepticism.
Oh, I see.
By proving his vision is acutely accurate in the physical world, he earns the intellectual authority required to speak on the macro spiritual level. He builds a foundation of undeniable credibility using a cracked glass and a nautical clock.
Wow. Yeah, and once that credibility is established, the session pivots sharply. I mean, he moves from present-day snooping to historical baggage.
And he doesn't pull his punches.
Not at all. But he doesn't just list off past lives like a laundry list. He uses them to utterly dismantle the guests' egos. Because, you know, when you think of past lives, the cliche is always that everyone was like Cleopatra or Napoleon or some high priestess in Atlantis.
Oh, totally. Everyone wants to be royalty. But Seth has absolutely zero interest in flattering anyone's ego.
Yeah.
The past life readings in session 333 are essentially cosmic roasts.
Cosmic roasts. That is exactly what they are.
He looks at John and reaches way back to the 15th century, outlining this entire itinerary from Holland to Turkey. And he reveals that John was a male involved in music, but not as a prodigy.
No, definitely not a prodigy. Seth bluntly states, quote, he could write music. It seems he stole scores and sold them to recognized composers.
Which is just so funny. He wasn't Mozart.
Right. He was the guy bootlegging Mozart's sheet music and fencing it on the black market.
Exactly. And Seth even gives us the guy's name, Tans Mans Davens. He lived from 1487 to 1535 and apparently died violently in Turkey due to his shady business endeavors.
Yeah, Seth says he was irresponsible, lacked discipline, ran from his problems, and this is key, had an overbearing German wife.
Yes. And we really have to look at the why behind this revelation, because Seth isn't just spinning a fascinating yarn about a 15th century music thief just to entertain the room.
Right, there's a point to it.
Yeah, a very sharp point. He is drawing a direct causal line between the psychological makeup of Tans Mans Davens and the psychological hang-ups of John Bradley in 1967.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, during a break in the session, John's friend Barbara had casually mentioned that she didn't like Germans and that she had no musical ability. When the session resumes, Seth uses this mundane chatter as a scalpel.
Yes, but how exactly does that work mechanically? Because if Tans died in 1535, where does the trauma sit for over 4 centuries before it manifests in John Bradley's modern psyche?
That's the million-dollar question. In the framework of the Seth Material, time is not linear at all. It is simultaneous.
Simultaneous, okay.
The past, present, and future selves all exist concurrently within the structure of what Seth calls the inner ego. Therefore, the unresolved emotional resonances, the traumas, the prejudices, the fears, they don't just sit in some historical waiting room for 400 years.
So they're active right now.
Exactly. They bleed through the permeable membrane of the subconscious directly into the current personality. Seth explains to John that his musical ability was misused in that past life, which is exactly why he suppressed it in this one.
Oh, wow. And he traces John's modern-day resentment directly back to his past life marriage, too.
He sure does.
Seth tells him, quote, You were separated from your wife for many years and did not get along well. If you will forgive me, she was more a male than you were in reality, and the Germans to you now still represent arrogant masculinity.
That is
It's
staggering.
unbelievable. He is identifying the root cause of a...
It was an impoverished, harsh existence, definitely.
Hmm.
But Seth notes there was a natural spiritual element in the culture, and John actually learned and grew within it.
So it kind of paints a picture of a soul deliberately experimenting with different moral calibrations. Like the 15th century life was a lesson in the consequences of irresponsibility and petty crime,
Right.
while the 17th century life was a study in spiritual resilience amid physical deprivation.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
But as fascinating as John's cosmic history is, Barbara's turn in the hot seat is just a masterclass in brutal yet compassionate honesty.
Oh, absolutely. Seth jumps to the 19th century for Barbara, placing her right in the United States, specifically Oklahoma.
Yeah, she lived from 1831 to 1876 in a town with the word Alto in the name, which the guests quickly deduce is Altus, Oklahoma. Her husband was a farmer, and her last name was Negar.
But the tension in the room breaks perfectly when Barbara asks Seth what her first name was.
Seth's reaction is the best. He is visibly amused by her question. He says very humorously, quote, "You will not like it. It is unfortunately soda."
Soda.
And Barbara is so caught off guard she asks him to spell it. She says, "Do you mean S-O-D-A?" And Seth replies, "Indeed. Do not blame me. I did not name you. Perhaps you were bubbly."
It's just a profoundly human moment of levity from a non-physical entity.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so charming. But once the laughter fades, the psychological dissection really begins.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back.
Not at all. Seth describes Soda as a fairly rigid personality with many prejudices given to literal interpretations. And he says that while she had a redeeming curiosity, her rigidity became too demanding, and she vigorously fought her own impulses toward freedom.
And here is where Seth connects the historical behavior to her current struggles, because he tells Barbara there is a tendency toward overdependence balanced by a scorn toward those who are overdependent.
Which is such a complex psychological state.
It really is. He points out that she still has unresolved conflicts operating from her own 15th century existence, which results in her drawing the male so idealistically that the real male is found wanting by contrast.
Let's spend a minute unpacking the psychology of that idealistic projection because it is incredibly common.
Please do.
Seth tells her there is deep distrust of the male. These are projected outward, you see, and then reacted against. So she holds men to an impossible phantom standard created by centuries of unresolved baggage.
Wow. Centuries of it.
Yes, and when real flawed men inevitably fail to meet this impossible standard, it validates her deep-seated distrust. She is essentially setting up a subconscious trap, effectively projecting historical trauma onto modern relationships to ensure they fail.
That is heavy. But here's where it gets really interesting, though. Seth drops a massive cosmic twist regarding Barbara's current friend, Dick.
Oh, this part is mind-bending.
Truly. So during a break, they were discussing relationships, and when Seth returns, he casually drops a bomb. He says, "There was a relationship existing between you and your friend in the Oklahoma existence. He was your grandmother."
Just let the implications of that sink in. The adult male friend sitting in Barbara's current social circle was the literal grandmother who raised her when she was Soda in 19th century Oklahoma.
It's crazy to think about. Seth explains he brought you up, and it is in that home that you lived. There were many problems not worked out that are being worked out now.
It completely reframes how we view our social circles. You think you're just dealing with a slightly annoying friend or complicated coworker, and it turns out you're actually locked in a multi-century karmic dance.
Just trying to resolve the fact that they were too strict with you in 1850.
Exactly. It suggests that our relationships are never accidental.
Yeah, it implies a closed-loop system of emotional evolution. Like we're drawn back together with the exact same souls to smooth out the rough edges we left behind in previous incarnations.
Which makes so much sense when you think about those instant connections or instant aversions you have with people.
Yes. And this understanding of karmic continuity naturally brings us to the core conflict of the session, where the past life analysis collides head-on with modern-day dating.
Because if you have established that this entity can see into hotel rooms in New York, knows about your stolen sheet music in the 15th century, and knows your friend used to be your grandmother well, you are inevitably going to ask it for life advice.
You'd be crazy not to, right?
Yeah.
So Barbara has a dilemma involving a man named Kenneth. She asks Seth a very direct question. Would you advise against a meeting with Kenneth?
It is the ultimate human temptation. She wants the cosmic entity to operate as a magic 8-ball. She wants a simple yes or no to be relieved of the heavy psychological burden of choice.
And who wouldn't? Honestly, if I had an all-knowing entity sitting in my living room, I would ask it what I should have for breakfast to optimize my timeline.
Same here.
But Seth absolutely refuses to play the fortune teller. He tells her, quote, "I suggest that you make your own decisions, young lady. For making them, you will discover your strengths and weaknesses. You know what you should do, and the decision must be your own."
He is basically that blunt therapist friend who refuses to enable you.
Yes, he will not let you text your toxic ex, and he will not give you a permission slip to make a bad choice.
But it goes deeper than just tough love. Seth is outlining a fundamental law of consciousness regarding free will here. If he tells her what to do, he robs her of the evolutionary growth that can only be achieved through wrestling with a decision, executing a choice, and surviving the consequences.
Right. He says explicitly, "I will help you rely upon yourself to better advantage, but I will not make your decisions for you nor allow you to use me in that respect." I mean this quite kindly.
That's a profound boundary.
It is. The ultimate goal of channeled wisdom isn't to create dependency on the channel. It's to force the individual to realize their own autonomy.
But Barbara, being incredibly human, tries to find a loophole in his boundary.
Of course she does.
She asks, will you tell me if he's interested in a meeting, or will go along with this just for my sake, as is his nature? She is trying to get the answer through the back door. Like, fine, don't tell me what to do, but just read his mind for me.
It's a little mind reading, please. And Seth, while strictly maintaining his boundary of not dictating her actions, he does grant her a stunningly clear, unvarnished evaluation of Kenneth's emotional availability.
He does.
He pauses and then delivers a reality check that is devastatingly accurate. He says, "We find we do not believe that he is interested in the kind of relationship that you have in mind. He is somewhat sentimentally intrigued, but he is not about to change the framework of his days, and he is not resolute."
He is not about to change the framework of his days. Ouch.
Ouch is right. I mean, how many people listening right now need to hear exactly that sentence about someone in their own lives?
A lot of people, I bet.
Seth strips away all of Barbara's idealized illusions. He tells her he realizes that basically you expect what he cannot give. There will be sentiment. There will not be any basic long-term commitment.
It is the cosmic equivalent of he's just not that into you.
Sure.
But Seth doesn't deliver this to hurt her. He delivers it to give her the absolute clarity required to make an empowered choice. He knows she's already projecting her historical traumas onto Kenneth.
Yeah, he tells her, "You are looking to the past, however, and you should look to the future. You will learn from such a meeting in any case, and you have set yourself all ready to go."
He recognizes that subconsciously she has already made her choice.
Right.
She is going to go to the meeting regardless of what Seth says. He is just ensuring she walks into that meeting with her eyes wide open, accepting Kenneth for exactly who he is, rather than who her 15th century baggage needs him to be.
It is an incredible distillation of Seth's core teaching, which is you create your own reality, and you must take absolute responsibility for the choices you make within it.
It completely grounds the esoteric in the everyday. The true value of the Seth material isn't that it asks you to float away into the astral plane. It demands that you plant your feet firmly on the ground, look at your relationships honestly, and take ownership of your consciousness.
It is such a remarkable journey for one session. I mean, we start with psychic ring cameras spying on a $7.95 dinner.
With mermaid menus.
With mermaid menus. And then we move through the bootleg sheet music of Tance Manstavens. We visit the rigid plains of Oklahoma with soda. And we end up with highly actionable relationship advice. For those of you listening, we strongly encourage you to study the Seth Material books to explore these concepts further.
There is just a profound depth to these transcripts that we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of today. To read the full session and explore the entire series, you really must visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. Just go to sethcenter.com for the early sessions.
It's an amazing resource.
It is an unparalleled rabbit hole for anyone interested in the mechanical intersection of metaphysics and human psychology.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over. We spent a lot of time today discussing how the unresolved traumas of our past lives bleed into our current reality.
And how the souls we interact with might be very familiar to us.
Right. So consider this. Look around at the most difficult people in your current life. The boss who constantly micromanages you, the neighbor who seemingly exists just to drive you crazy, or the family member who always knows exactly how to push your buttons.
Yeah, what if they aren't just random annoyances? What if they are past life relatives you are still working at a cosmic tab with?
Wow.
What if the friction you feel today is just the echo of an argument you had in a snowy outpost in 17th century China?
It certainly changes the way you look at the guy who just cut you off in traffic.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the one who stole your sheet music in 1487.
You never know.
You really don't. The diagnostic waters of the soul are undeniably murky, but sometimes a voice from a 1967 living room cuts right through the noise to show us exactly where the fracture is. So keep questioning the mundane, and remember that you never truly know who you're talking to.